Our text today begins with Mark chapter 3, verse 6. And the Pharisees went forth, and straightway took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. We promised to say a few words today about why the Jews went to the Herodians with their conspiracy against Jesus, and we will do that now. The matter is not of great significance, but it merits some discussion. Remember, if you can, in our earlier discussion, that the Herods were descendants of Esau, who had a great respect for, if not an actual belief in, the religion of the Jews and the God of Israel. Herod the Tetrarch took John the Baptist for a prophet. He believed in an afterlife and, to some extent at least, the resurrection. He thought that Jesus was John the Baptist who had come back to life. His father Herod the Great, a cruel and ego-centered man, nevertheless believed in the efficacy of the Jewish scriptures. He believed that the King of the Jews would be born in Bethlehem, and he feared that coming king. The Herodians were atheists and secularists. They were neither a political nor a religious group. Now, they were sort of like the anarchist society of today, the ACLU, the university movement, or other groups whose basic motivation is to destroy religion and the idea of God. Because of that, they had a serious and significant voice with Rome. The Jews knew that their plan to bring about the death of Christ could not be put before the people at that time. His movement was very popular. The people took Jesus for a prophet, and many of them believed he was the Christ. The movement would have to be stopped before the people could be gotten on board. They did not feel that Herod would be sympathetic to their cause, but they knew who would be: the Herodians. The Herodians were offended at the religious movement started by John the Baptist and Jesus, and they would gladly help in trying to stamp it out. There was no long-standing friendship or even common ground between the Jews and the Herodians, but enemies soon would become friends in the program to get rid of the Christ, not just in such a way that he would be gone, but in a way that he would be humiliated, and they could portray him as a liar and a criminal. One thing would do that in the minds of the Jews: crucifixion, a death, according to Jewish tradition, that branded a man as debauched, depraved, heretical, and one who had brought a curse on Israel. The Jews could probably, in their minds at least, have hired assassins to get rid of Jesus, though it seems evident that God would not have let it succeed, but that would not serve their needs. The plan to settle for nothing less than the crucifixion of Jesus started right here, when the Jews made the decision to conspire with these atheists about the best way to get rid of Jesus and wash his doctrines and teachings out of the land and out of the minds of the people. Now, this was not only a hateful but a desperate thing for the Jews to do. The Herodians had no use for the Jews, and the Jews despised the Herodians. But as Reginald Ernest Oscar White once observed in his marvelous devotional book, Beneath the Cross of Jesus, the hatred of the Christ made for strange bedfellows. It overcame every obstacle and brought these natural enemies together. Judaism and atheism are poles apart in the world of humanism, but they are both a part of the fallen world of Adam, and they have a common goal. That goal is to bring down the Bible, God, and the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, it's sort of like that which we see in America today, where natural enemies are coming together as friends in their hatred of the president because of his Christian faith, and their fanatical, perverted drive to see pro-homosexual, anti-Christian judges put on the courts. All differences are secondary to that goal and the need to band together in their unholy cause. But we do not want this discussion to degenerate into a political one. The Pharisees knew that the Herodians would not be able to resist the temptation to join forces with the Jews to get rid of this one who was giving religion, their greatest enemy, new credence. And the Jews were right about that. Now we will see this playing out as we go along, but there is nothing more to say about it at the moment. In St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 12 and 13, we read, "And it came to pass in those days that he went into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. And when it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom he also named apostles." What we want to do today is talk a little about those 12 disciples, to whom Jesus also gave the title of apostles, here in verse 14. Now, this is a matter that is confusing to many people. We want to learn about some of the variants in the names of the disciples. To do that, I will read the various gospel accounts about the identity of these men. In St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 2 through 4, we have this list of the 12. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these: the first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname is Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. In St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 3, in verses 13 through 17, the list reads like this: "And he goeth up into a mountain, and calleth unto him whom he would, and they came unto him. And he ordained 12, that they should be with him, and that he might send them forth to preach, and to have power to heal sickness, and to cast out devils. And Simon was surnamed Peter, and James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James, and he surnamed them Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder, and Andrew, and Philip, and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, and Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him." In St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 13 through 16, we also have a list of the names. "And when it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom he also named apostles: Simon, whom he also named Peter, and Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, Simon called Zelotes, and Judas the brother of James, and Judas Iscariot, which also was the traitor." The Apostle Peter is also known as Simon and Cephas in the Bible. Now, there's no definition for the name Simon in the Greek lexicon, but in Hebrew it means hearing, or one who hears. It would seem to indicate a serious or committed man. In John chapter 1, verse 42, in John 21 and verse 15, and in Matthew 16 and verse 17, he is said to be the son of Jonah, or of Jonas. Tradition has it that Johanna was his mother, but there is no proof of that. In the Greek, his name Peter is Petros, and it means a piece of a rock or a little stone. The name Cephas, or Cephas as some prefer to pronounce it, is of Chaldee origin, and it means the same as the name Peter. Peter was one of the three chosen among the apostles, the other two being James and John. They alone were with Jesus in the Mount of Transfiguration, and they alone were with him in the solitary place in Gethsemane. Peter exercised the power of the keys to the kingdom that Jesus had given to them at Pentecost and other places, but only in oratory. Contrary to some traditions, there is no biblical evidence that Peter ever exercised authority over the other apostles. James alone, in the 15th chapter of Acts, holds that distinction as far as the Scriptures are concerned. Now, there are many things to observe and to talk about where St. Peter is concerned, and we will do that as we go along. We will not try to discuss all of them now, or we will become tedious and leave no time to talk about the others in this biblical scene we have before us today. Andrew, of course, was the brother of Peter and one of the 12. It was he who, in the first chapter of John, brought Peter to Jesus. He has little uniqueness in the gospel accounts other than that. The first mentioned apostle James, one of the original 12 and one of the privileged 3, was a son of Zebedee. His mother was Salome. He was one of the close confidants of Jesus, and with his brother John was nicknamed by Jesus the Sons of Thunder, Boanerges. Contrary to what many believe, it is almost a certainty that James, the son of Zebedee, did not write the book of James. He was killed with the sword early on by Herod in order to please the people, too early, we believe, to have written the book bearing his name. There is another James who was an apostle, and he is identified in chapter 10, verse 3 of Matthew as the son of Alphaeus. Now this James is sometimes called the Less. Though he apparently stood a bit lower in rank as to personal involvement of the 12 with Christ, that is not why he is called the Less. It is because he was a little or a short man. Well, some dispute that and say it was because he was the younger, not the smaller. Well, in any case, it refers to his person and not to his rank. His father's name, Alphaeus, means change and probably indicates that he was one of those who was looking for changes in the Jewish religion and perhaps the change, or in other words, the coming of the Christ who would bring what the Old Testament prophets referred to as the Reformation. Now, not much else is said about James, the son of Alphaeus. There is, of course, another James that we will talk about briefly while we're on the biblical subjects of Jameses, and that is the Lord's brother James. Now, you will find that verification in Matthew chapter 13, verses 55 and 56, where it is recorded, "Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren James and Joseph and Simon and Judas and his sisters? Are they not all with us?" In Galatians chapter 1, verses 18 and 19, St. Paul identifies him as an apostle when he writes, "Then 3 years after I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter and abode with him 15 days, but other of the apostles saw I none, save James the Lord's brother." This is the James who was bishop of the church in Jerusalem in Acts 15, and the very James who wrote the book of James, in our view. Now there's still another James mentioned in the Gospels, and that is in the 6th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, where we read that Judas, not Iscariot, was of James. Now this rather archaic language means that a man named James was Judas's father. Disregard the italicized words in this verse because they are misleading. In the Greek, it does not say Judas, the brother of James, but Judas of James. Judas the apostle, and remember, he is not Judas Iscariot, but another apostle, St. Jude, the one who wrote the book of Jude, was not the brother of James of Zebedee or James of Alphaeus. He was Judas, the son of James. Now this James, who was the father of Judas, was not an apostle. James, the brother of the Lord, had a brother named Judas in Matthew 13 and verse 55, but the apostle Judas is not that Judas, who was not an apostle. Martin Luther argued for yet another James, an unknown James, and a heretic who wrote the book of James. Luther, not a very good theologian at all, and something of a wild man, did not understand the distinction between justification and sanctification. And because he did not, he could not reconcile what he considered to be the contradiction between James and Romans chapter 3 and 4 on the subject of justification by faith. Therefore, he concluded that the book of James could not be inspired. He could not see that James was talking about sanctification in the Christian life, and St. Paul in Romans was talking about justification of the ungodly and bringing them into the family of God. Well, of course, there is no contradiction at all between the book of James and St. Paul in Romans to those who are not hopelessly and helplessly mired in the heretical Arminian doctrine of works for salvation. Luther has gained some followers on this through the years with that argument, but for the most part it is not taken seriously, and of course Historic Orthodox Christianity discounts it entirely. So are you thoroughly confused now about the Jameses of the New Testament? Well, it is a bit of a confusing subject, but let's review briefly. Number one, there is James, the brother of John, one of the sons of Zebedee, and one of the three that Jesus chose to be with him all of the time, or at least most of the time. Number two, there is James the Less, the son of Alphaeus, who was one of the original 12. Number three, there was James the Lord's brother, an apostle, but not one of the original 12, who was the bishop of the church in Jerusalem in Acts 15, and who most likely wrote the book of James. Number four, there was a man named James, who was the father of the apostle Judas, but not Judas Iscariot. This is the same Jude who wrote the book of Jude. Number five, Luther argued for an unknown James, the existence of which Historic Orthodox Christianity denies. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time on this just now, but if you want to go to our website, www.godspointofview.com, and look under transcriptions and then under Harmony of the Gospels, you can find this date and download a transcript of this program for free and read it and study it over if you're interested. Next, we have the disciple and the apostle John, also a son of Zebedee and brother of James. Jesus had given Simon the nickname Peter or Cephas, meaning a stone. He gave James and John the nickname Boanerges, which means the sons of thunder, because of their powerful, dedicated, and no-nonsense approach to truth. This is St. John the Apostle, who was given the privilege to write the Gospel of John and present the message of salvation by grace and truth by the human intervention of the incarnate God, the Lamb of God, who would take away the sins of the world. John also wrote the 3 epistles of John. He was Jesus' closest friend and confidant. When the disciples wanted to find out something from Jesus, they often put John up to asking him because they perceived that John could get more out of Jesus than they could. John was the one to whom Jesus entrusted the care and keeping of his mother at the crucifixion. It is also the John to whom Jesus gave the great revelation of what is going on in this world with his church and why. Like his brother James, John did not suffer fools gladly, and there are no more scathing rebukes in all the Bible than those found in the epistles bearing his name. According to St. Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 1 through 5, no man in the church ever had more honor and glory from God during his earthly ministry than St. John the Divine. Now we will stop here today and continue with our comments on the calling, the identity, and the persons of the 12 disciples next time, if the Lord is willing.
Read more at godspointofview.com. A copy of this book is available from Amazon in Kindle and paperback format. Link in the description.